Well, hello, hello. It's DNN Dave, and it's Southern Fried DNN Meetup. And this is the August the 19th, 2021 edition. So glad to see everybody here. Good to see your faces, those of you that are joining live, and your pictures, those that are just on audio, and those that are watching playback. Thanks for checking us out on YouTube or on southernfrieddnn.com. So Ryan Moore is not here tonight. He's out on a camping trip, so I'm kind of pinch hitting here, and Clint's going to help me out if I say something stupid and or wrong. So thank you, Clint. I'm going to go ahead and get my screen shared here. And tonight, let's see, is my screen sharing here okay? You guys able to see it okay? Okay, cool deal. Okay, yeah, it just wasn't showing me my little green square around it like it normally does. So I guess because I'm recording in the cloud. So tonight some of you may have seen a little bit of a switcheroo on the agenda for tonight. We originally had Chris Hammond that was going to join us and talk about packaging for modules and so forth, but he had a last minute thing that came up and we had to scramble a bit, and we were fortunate enough to have Nik Kalyani, who many of you probably recognize his name and face from back in the day. And he's going to join us and talk a little bit about Web3 and what that means for DNN. So thanks, Nik, for joining in there at the last minute. It's really good to see you. I'll jump into, first of all, just thanking our sponsors for Southern Fried Meetup here. We've got manage.com, who proudly hosts the website for southernfrieddnn.com. And we've got a variety of modules out there, including Mandeep's live blog, I believe, that we use as the blog on our website. And thank you for donating that license to us. Mandeep's in the house here tonight, so thank you for that. And I'll jump into a few announcements. I'm pretty light on the announcements here tonight. So if I miss something that was important in the community that many of you may know about, or something that I don't know about or I don't mention, please feel free to chime in and let everybody know about all that. First of all is the recent release candidate for DNN 9.10.1. The RC1 is out there for that now, so be sure to check that out. There's not a whole lot of things in this, not a whole lot really even highlight, but we just need some maintenance releases here on a few things and some upgrades on some packages. So be sure to check that out. Always encourage the latest and greatest. And I think, Mitch, correct me if I'm wrong, we're probably looking at a release on this next week unless anything comes back in the testing cycle.
Yep. Yeah, and I'll talk about that a little bit here as well.
Okay, excellent. Over on the dnncommunity.org site, I'm glad to see that Mandeep's in the house tonight. He had posted a blog recently about the release of Vanjero, which, if those of you that do not know about that, it's a suite or a module that's installed in DNN that basically has a page building experience that's quite different than the core DNN features. And so if you're interested in something like that, be sure to check out this blog out on dnncommunity.org. And I think that just officially released like within the last few weeks here, a couple of weeks. So be sure to check that out. There's a lot of exciting things going on there. Also, I wanted to take a moment to highlight DNN Summit, which is coming up in February the 9th and 10th of 2022. And the current plan is for it to be a hybrid conference where the conference itself will be all virtual. Online using Hopin, just like the last DNN Summit. And there will potentially be some in-person social events there as well, depending on interest and kind of how things go with the current situation of the pandemic. So be sure to check this out. I believe, Mitch, I think y'all were going to probably extend the call for speakers. Is that correct? So
yeah, so we're not calling a lot of attention to it per se, but the call for speakers is still open on Sessionize. So those of you that have not had time to get any of your sessions in that you maybe wanted to, there's a little bit of time yet. We're keeping it open until September 1st. I will continue to start nagging folks that haven't necessarily submitted yet. Anybody needs the link get there in Sessionize to submit, feel free to, oh, it's still there on the homepage, so never mind, you should be able to find it. So submit away. We definitely do still need a few speakers, have some spots that we can fill. Any and all topics are welcomed, preferably at least related to DNN in some capacity, but feel free to be creative.
It's a great opportunity to speak, and it's always great to see new speakers out there. I know Aaron's joining us here tonight, Aaron Lopez, and he recently spoke at DNN Summit for the first time. And Aaron, tell us what your experience was there. I know you had a quite an experience with that.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience. I really enjoyed it. And I only submitted one session last year, and I only did one session, and I think I've got the hook in me now, so now I want to do more of them. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
If you had to say, say something to encourage somebody that might be on the fence for speaking, what would you say? Sorry to put you on the spot, by the way, but I figured.
Yeah, no worries. Don't overthink it. And also I would say, keep it simple and really focused, I would say. I mean, those are the sessions that I like, the ones that were just deliver the goods, so keep it simple and really focused. But yeah,
so focused on a specific topic rather than something that's huge and kind of high level and so forth. Yeah, that's good. I completely lost my train of thought. I was going to say brain lapse, count at old age here, but I was going to say something about speaking at DNN Summit. Oh yeah, I know what I was going to say. I was going to say, it's probably one of the most forgiving audiences you're going to possibly have too. So, if you feel like, kind of you're jumping out of your comfort zone and so forth, it's a very forgiving audience. And, I think anybody appreciates someone that's willing to step out and teach on a topic, and maybe you are or not the foremost expert in that area or whatever, but it's a really good experience regardless of what your skill level is, because there's always someone that can be encouraged by your level of skill and what you have to offer. So you may not be the one in the room that knows everything about it, but you don't have to, and that's the beauty of it. So I just encourage anybody to do that and step out and do something like that again. Okay, that's really all I had for announcements. Does anyone else know of anything that's going on in the community that I missed here? I see Daniel just joined us, Daniel Bladas. Is there anything that you know of out there that you want to bring attention to?
The idea of presenting. I find myself, I've presented a couple of sessions, and it's really awesome to present, because the best way to learn is to teach. So you kind of get on a subject and, okay, let me learn this properly so I don't look stupid in my presentation. And it forces you to learn stuff and best practices. And so it's a great way to learn is to have to teach. So it's a great opportunity to do some interesting stuff.
That's a great point. I know a couple of times I signed up for something I thought I knew more about than I did before, and I realized as I was preparing for it, I really needed to know my stuff and get it together. So it was a great opportunity to learn more with that. So, oh man, it is so great to see all your faces and names popping up over here on the list of attendees here. I think this is probably one of the larger attended meetups live attendance that we've had in quite some time. So really nice.
And David, I have one thing just for people to be on the lookout for. As everyone here most likely knows, the .NET Foundation, right? DNN Platform is a member of the .NET Foundation, and there are 2 open board seats on the .NET Foundation. They have, well, let's just say they're not organizing it as well as they have in prior years. But the nomination or the candidates are going to be announced, quote unquote, by August 31st, with then a voting period from September 1st through September 15th is what it sounds like. The dates may change, but I will be making some announcements on it, and anything that you guys can do. I will be, hopefully, to my knowledge, I will be on the list of candidates for consideration for a seat at that .NET Foundation board. It's relevant for us as an open source project because we get all of our support right now from a technology perspective comes from the .NET Foundation. So our build system, our ticket system, all of our ticketing system type things, GitHub, all of that stuff comes from the .NET Foundation, including the hosting infrastructure that we have for the update service and other pieces. So us having a better voice, other projects actually being maintained by people having a voice would be good. I don't know how the elections are going to go this year because none of the process has been followed. So when it comes out there, I'll make sure to make note, but just keep an eye out. You can join and be a member of the .NET Foundation. There are suggested dues to join, but it is not something that you have to actually contribute. I strongly suggest that folks do join. It's a way to give back to the community, but something just to be aware of that might be happening.
Yeah, that's a good point. As a community, we really need to, it would be really nice to have some representation there. I know the DNN Platform project is one of the largest, if not the largest .NET project on their, in their purview there. So, it's be really great to have some representation. I think this is probably what, your third year running, Mitch?
Third year running. Last year I was the absolute next one in the election to get, had there been an extra seat, I would have made it last year.
Yeah, so let's try to help get the word out there. I mean, I know Mitch probably feels uncomfortable, sharing it himself. So we need to kind of do the job for him and get the word out there, encourage everyone in our community and even those that you might know those outside of the community to vote on Mitch. And Clint, I think you were getting ready to say something, and I may have cut you off.
Just a random question on that, Mitchell. Those 2 board seats that are opened up, is that because like a staggered? It was like
I'm not sure why it's only 2.
No, well, I'm saying, was it time or did somebody leave? Is my
I'm not sure. It's so like normally they're very transparent about it. Normally, like they hit the dates.
Yeah.
The actual nominees, and we were supposed to have this by July 15th, and it is August 19th, and we still don't. I've had to shake multiple trees, including emailing Claire and the nominating committee and a number of other people just to get messages. Finally, I contacted somebody via Twitter and they started responding via Twitter direct message rather than email. So I think there's something a little bit unique this year. And I think it's that they've changed some of the process. Yeah. So
is Beth still there?
I have not talked with Beth. I've mostly been dealing with Claire and a couple of the people on the committee.
Gotcha. All right.
So
good stuff. Yeah, we will definitely be supporting and spreading the word.
Awesome. Thanks for pointing that out, Mitch. I guess let's just jump into presentations for tonight. First on the agenda, and Nick, I'm just realizing I didn't really even tell you which you would be first or second, but does you have any particular time constraints or anything? I've got both of you scheduled for about 30-ish minutes or so for that. So
the whole time in the world.
Okay, great. Well, I think we're going to start off with Mitch here, and Mitch is going to be talking a bit tonight, if I can get to the right screen, about DNN Technology. We get an opportunity as leaders to talk a little bit at the conferences, and share real high level information, but it's been really nice the last 3 months. We've been able to, each of the leaders been able to go a little bit more in depth about our areas and so forth. And tonight we're focusing on technology. So I know a lot of you are interested in what's kind of coming up with the platform and some of the things that are happening there. So Mitch is going to do that, but Mitch is also CEO of Iowa Computer Gurus. And I'm sure he'll share a little bit about his background there, and be sure to check them out. But Mitch, thanks for joining us tonight, and I'll go ahead and stop sharing and give it over to you.
All righty. And, just for everyone here, my intention tonight is really to give you a little bit of a overview, just kind of where we've gone and what's, kind of what we know is coming, what we can use from a technology perspective, how you might be able to help, and those kinds of things. Because I know that not everyone here, I recognize most of the names, right? No, not all of you are developer types. So I'm not going to go crazy into detail with what exactly we're doing from some of the technology points. But I think it's important to make sure that everyone understands some of the strategy behind what's happened over the course of the last year, what we know is going to happen in the coming year, and some of the areas that we're trying to emphasize and some of the areas that you can help contribute. As many of you know, I've been around the community for a long time, and we're deploying, solutions that are using DNN all the time, but we are also doing a lot of .NET Core work and some hybrid scenarios where we mix and match the two. And I'm always taking a look at what technology is feasible, what changes can we make, what changes do we need to make, and everybody that participates in those things on a regular basis, Daniel Veladas, David Poindexter, a couple of the others on this call here, we have these conversations quite a bit about what can we do, what do we need to do, and it's important for everybody here to kind of understand that there is a method to the madness, because we've definitely had a lot of change. And one of the biggest things is just looking at how many releases have we had. And I went back today, and we've done a total of 21 releases. This includes release candidates, but we've had 21 actual packaged releases of DNN Platform in the last 13 months. That's a lot of releases for a completely community-driven project, right? That's a lot of releases, and something that I don't think necessarily everyone always sees what we do. The couple of other things that come with all of this is that really we've been focusing primarily on continued stabilization and security over the course of the last year. With this, right, we have added new features, new functions, but a lot of those features and functions were added very specifically to address some of the security items.
Hey, Mitch, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Would you mind just sharing just a presentation or something? Because it's rather large on people's screen, I believe, probably. So you're showing your whole screen there.
The whole, why is it not doing what it was supposed to do?
Oh man, I was having fun reading the Slack combos.
Oh.
Yeah, I figured you probably didn't know that you were.
Nope, I didn't. Is that better?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, that's stupid Zoom.
Well, we see less stuff, but yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, feel free to take a look at how much my Xamarin mobile app is making me angry.
Can you open Outlook also?
Only if you respond to the emails that are outstanding for me.
Nope.
You can feel free to tell people not nice things, but you've got to respond to all emails.
Well, I know you forward me some, so.
Well, yeah, but that's because it had the word foreign language in it, and I'm out. But so the real key here is, right, we're working to continue to build and stabilize. As we look at the various updates that we've had over the years, DNN Platform is a older technology. It has had a lot of hands touching it. We've had a lot of different motivations behind some of the maintenance. So as we've continued to grow as a community and we continue to do things, we've had to undo, right, a lot of those things that have happened in the past. We've had to take features that maybe were implemented to check a box and either fix them or remove them. We've had to take some of those features that acted funny and figure out what were they supposed to do. What I see as a positive with all of this is, we've had a lot of releases, which is good. We haven't had a lot of things that have gone too crazy with those releases. And more importantly, we've had 34 individual contributors that have actually contributed source code in the last 13 months. So that's not a huge number, but it's a number that's larger than the number was in the 12 months before that. So it's a trend in the correct direction, right? We will always only have a certain amount of people that are going to contribute at the developer contribution level, right? So the first thing, it's the only thing I can easily grab a metric on, because we have a lot of knowledge, right? You have to understand how DNN works. But the fact that this number is continuing to stay the same or growing is a very positive thing for me in terms of our processes of handling the technology and looking at what we're doing. Now, as we look forward from some of these releases, we've had a couple really important releases over the course of the last year. And I want to make sure that we always continue to drive home the importance of why we've done the releases that we've done and why the features that were included are there. So the 9.8.0 release, which we did last November, is the very first release of DNN Platform where it was possible to safely remove Telerik based on the DNN Platform product itself. Now, third-party modules, any open source modules that you might have that were using Telerik might still be a problem. But it's this release and later is the first time that we were able to remove Telerik. This included a huge community contribution, mostly led by David and Daniel for the new resource manager, which was the key component that was limiting DNN Platform. Now, this release is a very unique release. The most important thing with 9.8.0 is optional and required individuals to take extra steps on their own to actually comply with the security items. Now, with this, not everyone has read those instructions. Not everyone has caught on to the fact that the removal of Telerik is something you could do. So what I want to say here, and I thought about making it like large words that took up the entire slide. The most critical thing you can do today is to remove Telerik from your DNN installations immediately, period. Getting to 9.8.0 with Telerik removed is the absolutely most critical thing that you can do today. Not doing so places your site at extreme risk. There's no better way for me to explain that. To this point, we have taken the documentation of how to remove Telerik and we've put it in DNN docs. Daniel has been fantastic in linking those instructions in the release notes of every release since 9.8.0 so that we try to call attention to it. Upon further review with the rest of the technology advisory group and our approver group, we will also be releasing a security bulletin that draws specific attention to this. So we will be releasing at least one critical security bulletin with the 9.10.1 release when that goes next week. The one security bulletin that I can tell you about right now for sure is we're going to discuss the importance of the removal of Telerik. We've done this, we provided the guidance, but we did not publish a security bulletin because historically we've only published security bulletins when the issue is actually resolved. We are making an exception to this for Telerik because it's absolutely critical that people do this. So I just want to encourage anyone and everyone to be thinking about your installations, your custom code, anything that has a dependency upon Telerik, that you need to absolutely get that removed right away. And so it's one of those things where, again, just keep an eye on your environments and those kinds of things. Alessandra had the question of like, what version of Telerik does it need to be removed from? Any version 5.2.0 to 9.10.0 that has not had Telerik removed needs to have it removed. So basically, if you have a version older than 5.2.0, I would like to have a separate conversation with you about security and updates. But if you have a version of DNN, it needs to have Telerik removed. You've got to get to 9.8.0 or later. I do know of a couple 4.4.1 and 3.3.1 sites in production. So it's not uncommon, unfortunately, for that to happen. But again, just something we want to make sure that people are really, really aware of. 3012, David, you win. Actually, I saw one site a couple months ago. I don't remember what version of one it was, but it was actually in production. I don't know how.
Was it the infamous E version? Maybe Nick can tell us what the E stood for.
I remember this from DNN Jeopardy.
Keep that for the DNN Jeopardy. Don't reveal the secret. Yeah,
you can't give away the grand prize at Jeopardy. But again, I hate to belabor this, but I'm, as the person that also responds to all of the security reports, I can tell you that people aren't taking this seriously. So any chance that I can get on a soapbox to tell people how important this is, I want to make sure that we really, really, truly drive this home. So what have we done since 9.8, right? We've had a 9.9 release, a 9.9.1 release. We've had a 9.10 release. We're continuing to do the things that we've been talking about, right? We're continuing to stabilize the environment, fix the features in the persona bar that didn't work, adding back checkboxes for things that you used to be able to configure within the application, but you couldn't. And we've also been focusing on improving the experience for developers that are using new technology. So for those of you that have been around for a while or experienced some of the little growing pains that have happened over the years, we've had this chicken and egg game that we've been playing with some of the extension vendors, where one extension vendor is using one product that we use in the platform, and then, oh gosh, you can't upgrade DNN because that module vendor needs to update their packages, or vice versa. We have taken some steps in 9.10 specifically to drastically reduce some of those dependencies. So we've taken critical components that we reference within DNN Platform. We've moved them into a dependency structure that will play nicely with other module vendors. The hope is that with those changes that we've made as a community, it will be easier for those extension developers to continue to have better compatibility across all editions of DNN Platform that they might want to support. So again, we're really, really trying to get that as stable as we can. A big thing that is also part of this is that we reintroduced the concept of a critical security update notification in the persona bar using the update service. This is something that we will be able to see for real on Tuesday, because when 9.10.1 is released, we will have a critical security bulletin that is published. So the idea here is, again, we're working on a way to be able to push a notification to those that maybe didn't see the release notes on GitHub, that maybe didn't attend this meeting, that aren't paying attention to the forums, right? We're making sure that the platform itself has a potential way to be able to reach out and let people know there's stuff out there. So I think it's a good way, again, to continue to put that megaphone out there so that we can continue to push to get those kinds of things out there and make things secure, right? It's in our best interest to get everybody upgraded, to get everybody to the latest and greatest version with the most recent security patches installed, because that protects the brand and reputation of the DNN Platform project. So now, with all of this, the question of the hour has always been, what's next? Well, 10x is something that we are working on, and we're going to be starting to shift gears strategically towards over the course of the next couple of weeks, next weeks and months. The biggest thing that is going to happen with 10 is the Telerik removal that has currently been optional, which is what we were just talking about, will become automatic and mandatory as part of that upgrade process. So if you go through and do an upgrade to 10x, Telerik is going to be removed. For some individuals, this will be a problem. We understand that, but it's something that we will have to make sure that we address. i.e. you'll need to get with those module vendors to make sure that you get a version that's able to support the latest and greatest, okay? We are going to do everything that we can to try to prevent catastrophe from happening when you go to do that. There's an open source tool of mine that we released that helps you identify any modules that have a dependency on Telerik. But the nature of how DNN updates, if you start the update and you can't remove Telerik, you're going to need to roll back to a backup on your site. So it is going to be important that folks understand what they're looking for in their environment. Some other things that we know of is we know there will be breaking changes in the APIs for version 10. We have a number of things that have been marked for removal in DNN versions 8x or earlier. So these are things that have been marked for removal for a really, really long time. Developers that are building extensions will have been getting warnings and compiler errors that they should see every single time they work for years. A couple of the items that are being removed in this have been marked for removal since 2006. So we will have some breaking changes there. Our hope is that by utilizing the release candidate process, by the fact that we've been talking about this for a number of years, that the extension vendors will do everything in their power to keep this updated. Most of the vendors, from what we've been able to pull so far, when they made the changes necessary to support 9.2, they made all of the changes necessary that would support 10. So I don't believe it's going to be a large issue, especially for those that have to do things for Telerik removal. But it will be important for everyone to be aware of the upgrade process and be cautious of what modules do you have installed, and do you need to install an upgrade to that module prior to installing the 10x upgrade. And we'll work to continue to provide as much information as possible in the release notes with DNN Platform so that you know what might be happening. And then with regards to other things that we're looking at, we are looking at adding some features to improve cloud support, most specifically some items to make it so that DNN Platform out of the box will be able to support auto scale in Azure. I know that that feature is coming because I'm the one contributing it, and it will be there as part of 10, which will be a really good thing for those that are running higher volume sites. Being able to work inside of app service with auto scaling turned on is a huge win for the possibilities of what you can do with DNN Platform. We also have some emphasis being placed on improving the maintainability of the persona bar and other components related to the persona bar. There's a lot of talk about upgrading dependencies, getting to more current versions of React, and maybe even making the code a little bit cleaner if we get a real stretch goal from some of those people that want to do that. We are still open for ideas, right? We're still welcoming contributions. We do not have a solid timeline set at this point for exactly when we want to go to 10, but my guidance for everyone is that we do need to try to get to 10 as soon as we can. Taking the stance of removing Telerik and being Telerik free by default is a really big win from a security perspective. It allows us to go back to saying that out of the box, we are a secure platform. Right now, we cannot say that. You must complete optional security elements to be able to get things taken care of. I see a question in the chat talking about the security and Telerik concept. Evoke is special. So I'm not going to air the dirty laundry of the actual Telerik debacle. For those of you that want to know the real details, feel free to email me. But Evoke, starting with version 9.2.0 and later of Evoke, did not have a Telerik dependency. If you installed Evoke 9.2.0 from the distribution package that was provided by DNN software, it did not have Telerik installed with it. So as long as if you're on Evoke and you're 9.2.0 and later, you can uninstall Telerik if you happen to have already had it installed for some reason. And that is because the one dependency that makes it so that the open source project was dependent upon Telerik, which was the file manager. We did not have a open source version equivalent replacement until 9.8.0. And that's why there's a version discrepancy, because it is absolutely true right now that Evoke is substantially far behind the community in terms of what release they're building on. I believe that the latest version of Evoke, which is 9.6.14, I believe.
Actually, I just looked, Mitch, it's 9.6.21, but it's still based on 9.6.1 of DNN Platform.
Yep. Okay. As I said, they keep going. They're doing weekly releases now. So I did not realize they're all the way up to 21. I have received some updates from Ash that they are going to be trying to go to basing off of 9. Well, I don't know. They're going to be doing a rebase on their side at some point to get back current, but I don't know any details for sure on what they're doing with that. But we are looking for anything that the community wants to contribute. Feature releases, right, are our time that if we do need to make a breaking change within reason, we can. Other ideas that have been tossed around, and we'll probably start opening some issues for conversation on GitHub, have been things like cleaning up default CSS, minimizing some of the styles. Lots of little things like that have also been thrown around as things that we can look at improving with the 10x release. So as we go forward, one of the things that I do want to continue to draw attention to are those security bulletins. As I mentioned, we are going to be publishing at minimum one on Tuesday when we release 9.10.1. Right now, security bulletins are posted at the DNN Security Center, which is still currently hosted with dnnsoftware.com. I encourage folks to check the Security Center. We also, anytime that we release a new version of DNN that has a security alert attached to it, we will provide a link to the Security Center in those release notes. Because we know that a lot of people, the only way to get automated email notifications at this point in time is to subscribe to the release on GitHub. So by us providing the link in the GitHub repository, you'll at least be able to kind of look through those release notes really quickly and see, oh gosh, there's a security notice to help give you some guidance. Eventually, we do have future plans to move that over to dnncommunity.org to bring it all under the community umbrella. But right now we still are leveraging the stuff that's out there. The other thing that's worth noting here is if you have a suspected security vulnerability that you've identified with DNN Platform, security@dnnsoftware.com. Yes, that is a DNN Corp email address. But at the end of the day, it's monitored by myself and like one or two other people. The idea with this is if you have something that's a security related issue and you want to report it, it's the secure place to do so. It is our policy to not talk publicly about security issues. Telerik is a very weird one because there's no denying it or hiding it. But if you believe your site's been hacked, you want us to look at something, that is the alias to send to. It goes to a secure ticketing system. So it's not going to any individuals' phones, that kind of thing. So feel free to submit anything there. Part of that, if you believe, hey, I did this and I uploaded a malicious file, that's the kinds of things that we can take care of. Through that security alias, we are not able to take, a 50-page security analysis that a third-party tool provided and be able to give you, oh yeah, those are false positives, that kind of thing. We're not reviewing security audit reports. We're working to really respond to security threats. There's other options available for that, but I just like to kind of call attention to that's for security reports, really. Anything that's an actual security concern. It's all done on a volunteer basis. No one is compensated for that. It's just a dedicated community location for you to be able to reach out and ask for assistance when you believe your site's been compromised. Most of the time, I'll be able to kind of point you to what's going on. I will just lead with the first question you're going to get asked is what version of DNN are you on? The second question you're going to get asked is, have you removed Telerik? If your answer is less than 9.8.0 and or that Telerik is still installed, the first thing you're going to get told is get both of those situations taken care of immediately. So just something to be aware of overall. And we're continuing to refine that process to make sure that we communicate as much information as we can to keep people secure. Technology futures, this is something that people always ask, so I wanted to make sure to bring this up here. We are still continuing down the path that we've been talking about, which is we are a .NET 4.8 product, and we will continue to be a .NET 4.8 product. David and I did a series of blog posts last fall, kind of talking about knowing what you are and knowing what you aren't. And right now we are a CMS platform built on .NET technologies. We are built on .NET framework. We can continue to be the best that we can be on that framework. And we have security patching and support from Microsoft for at least the next 10 years. So I think we're still in a pretty healthy place. Internet 11 support is something that just came up, actually, I think earlier this morning in some reported issues. Internet Explorer 11 is being sunsetted. We've not made an official policy statement yet, but it is important for us to note that starting with 10X, we aren't guaranteeing support for Internet Explorer 11. We will be making that announcement as part of the 10X release. Microsoft's dropping support for it completely in 2022. So as we look at the support life cycle, everything there, we can't continue limiting ourselves in technology to try to have that backwards compatibility support. If we can fix something for IE 11 and it doesn't harm or otherwise negatively impact the future, we will still accept a contribution, but we are not going to be doing active testing from a development perspective, from a pull request perspective against Internet Explorer 11. And then with 10X, really what we're looking to do is to continue this trend of stabilizing and optimizing and adjusting to the things that we can't. So such as cloud support, performance, that kind of thing. Okay, now I've talked a lot about the development side of things, but we also need involvement from folks in any capacity, right? We don't just need developers. I welcome developers. Anybody that wants to contribute code, I will gladly spend the time to make sure you understand how it works. But we do need testing. We need people to help with documentation. When we put out a release candidate, pull down the release candidate, be able to go and, yes, I know this release candidate worked. Hey, I am a user of Ipfs modules. I verify that they work on the new release. Hey, I use, it doesn't matter, right? Any validation that what was working is still working, or things that were broken have actually been resolved. Any of those types of validation is an absolute win for us and a great community contribution. We are continuing to try to make note of recognizing the contributions outside of the development ones, right? Comments on issues, reporting issues, engaging with us, all of those kinds of things are very welcomed. The other thing that we always like to call attention to from the technology side, and again, this goes to everyone else, just so happens that GitHub is a way to do it. The two biggest questions I get is, how do I help support a developer that has made a benefit, to me or to the community? What can I do to give something back to them? And the other question is, I want to pay for X feature. How do I do it? Well, GitHub sponsors is really the answer to this. With GitHub, you're able to sponsor an individual developer. So I pulled Daniel Vladis's up just because his was the first one I could find and click on. But basically what you're able to do is, for any of the developers, any user account that exists out in GitHub, you can sponsor that developer. Each of the developer can set their own sponsorship tiers. But the idea behind it is that you're welcoming, you're thanking that developer for the contributions that they have made. And David had a blog post that he shared as well, talking about this in a little bit more detail. The one thing that I don't know if it was in the post when David did it is there's been some recent changes to the sponsorship program that allows you to sponsor a developer for a set dollar amount, regardless of what their configurations are. And the idea here is, let's just say that you want a feature and you work with somebody that can develop it for you. They can contribute the feature, and then you can make a, you can sponsor them via GitHub. It keeps us as organizers out of the money game because we don't want to get into the money game, but it allows you to basically recognize and acknowledge that individual and say, thank you for doing that contribution. We've had a number of individuals that have done that already. The cloud caching provider that was introduced in one of the either 9.7 or 9.8 branch, that was a sponsored community involvement where, you know, somebody paid a developer to get that done. I know there's been a number of other small enhancements that have fallen into that. And it's a way to help getting involved, even if you don't necessarily have the technology skill set to do it. And it helps continue to make sure that we have developers that are going to be willing and able to contribute to the community. So it's something we just like to make sure that we call attention to as well. And, you know, there is still, you know, it has to meet code quality requirements and everything to be able to do it. So, you know, don't go find some guy that you just met that's never contributed to DNN before and, you know, give them $1,000 to contribute something to the platform because it may not meet the code requirements. But if there's questions about sponsorship or getting involved, David, myself, Daniel Vladas, all of us, we are more than willing to help individuals. And with regards to fixing tab URLs, that's going to require a lot more than multiple bribes. That's going to require a very large check and probably some alcohol.
What's a tab?
That's a better answer. Tabs? We don't have tabs. They're called pages now. But really, the whole point here is we are 100% community driven. You know, when I gave a status talk about 2 years ago, which I think is the last time I've had a real dedicated where are we at technology talk, we were still getting a lot of support from DNN Corp. We were getting testing assistance. We were getting developer assistance. That's pretty much non-existent at this point. We do still get occasional bug fixes. Typically, it's 5 lines of code here, 10 lines of code there. We are community driven. We do the builds, we do the releases, we do the release note documentation. We, you know, so helping to support and continue on that open source project is something that is really important to keeping our technology alive and keeping us moving forward. But it also gives us the best ability to keep things moving along. So with that, that's really from my perspective, a bit of where we've been and where we're going from a technology perspective. The future is continuing to be driven by what the community wants and the contributions we get, right? I have a laundry list of things that I would love to do, but we need developers to be able to do that. So the more contributors we can bring to the platform, the more people that we can bring to the table, and the more welcoming we can be, the more we'll be able to accomplish.
Fantastic, Mitch. Thanks so much for sharing that. I know it's interesting information for everybody and something that's very valuable for all that. So do we have any questions for Mitch? We have a few minutes here for questions if you'd like. Man, you must have done a really, really good job because like there's
or I bored them all, or they're like, I'm not asking that question.
I mean, sponsorships, just go for the guy you saw on the slides and we're good.
Yeah,
No, but honestly, I feel bad that only my name showed up.
How much did you pay for that spot there, Daniel?
No, that was a surprise.
It was total luck. So
yeah,
you gotta have sponsors. If you're existing sponsoring somebody, you can't show it. And if you're logged in certain cases, you can't. So it was hard to get a screenshot. So
yeah, Mitch, this is Dave Weinstein. I was wondering if you, I don't know if you have a minute or if you could do it in a minute to elaborate a little bit on the auto scaling in Azure.
So basically right now, the DNN platform has historically, people have tried to implement DNN and Azure App Service and have not been able to succeed due to caching and scheduling issues. DNN internally has this fundamental thing where the only way that it works well in a multi-server environment is it must know the name of the server. If it does not know the name of the server, really bad things happen. With that, there will be contributions coming for 10 that basically fix that glitch and make it able to accommodate in a different manner by taking servers offline that no longer exist and then ensuring that jobs still run only on one server when necessary. That's the primary breaking thing for autoscale. With the changes that are coming, more than anything, we're going to be able to, basically you can scale to as many nodes as you need in Azure, starting with 10.
Okay, cool, thanks.
I have a question for Mark Saunders since he's here. This is and he's driving.
He's not here.
Will Stroll wanted me to ask you when the pictures are going to be ready.
I don't know who you're talking about. Mark's not here.
Which year was that for?
Yeah, I was saying, which year though, Clint? Like that's a.
I think 3 years ago. We're still waiting.
Okay.
Wow, that's fantastic.
I cover my face, but I'm driving.
Well, thanks again, Mitch. Big round of applause. For
thanks everybody, and
doing that.
It's all community-driven efforts. So
awesome. Well, let's shift over. I've got my screen shared again here. Hopefully, everybody can see this. Nik Kalyani is joining us, and I just pronounced that completely wrong. Kalyani. Many of you may not recognize his name unless you've been around for a while, but you'll notice on his LinkedIn profile that .NET Nuke is listed there. So, Nik is one of the original founders of DNN Corp, along with the other 3 guys. And so he was the CEO of DNN Corp for a while. And I can't remember the years. I'd have to scroll down and look at his history, but it was quite a few years, like till maybe around 2013-ish or somewhere along there. Is that about right, Nik?
Well, there's a cassette in his profile, so that tells you something.
Probably before that, yeah. I don't remember myself.
Yeah,
Wow.
but since then he's been doing all sorts of great things, kind of out there on the cutting edge and so forth. And tonight he's going to be talking about Web3 and one of his recent ventures here, Decentology. I'm sure he's going to touch on that just a bit. So, Nik, I'll pass it over to you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for pinch hitting, and looking forward to hearing what you have to share with us tonight.
Thank you, David. Thank you for having me. I'll start by apologizing that I'm not going to be talking about packaging of DNN modules, and I know some of you will be disappointed about that, but that's life. We'll have to talk about Web3 instead. So let me share my screen here. All right, so what I'm going to be talking about today is DNN in Web3. So this is probably not a topic that comes up too often. I'd like to paint a picture here today and open up everybody's eyes to the potential of what could happen with DNN in Web3, how it could be a full-fledged citizen of Web3. When I talk about Web3, I'm talking about the aggregate collection of technologies that are collectively called decentralized web. What's prominent about them, or what's sort of the main feature about them, is they are decentralized. They rely on no single entity, no single company, no single host, no single server, and they're decentralized and they are immutable. So you cannot shut down a server or anything like that. All right, so quick intro. Thank you, David, for giving the background. I'll just add a little bit of color. So I'm the founder and CEO of Decentology. Our mission is to make it easy for Web2 developers to transition to Web3. More specifically, we are looking to onboard the first 10 million developers to blockchain technologies. That's our mission. I've been in this community for a while, and I used to make more frequent appearances than now, but every time I come back, I just love seeing familiar faces. And it's like in crypto world, in Twitter world, we use the term fam. So it's like, you know, family, fam here. I feel like that. I feel very welcome. Been in the Microsoft ecosystem also for a while for an MVP for 12 years. Those are my Australian Labradoodle puppies, Juno and Ziggy. They turn 1 on September 1st. So really excited that they could make an appearance here. This is their first public appearance, I believe.
How old is Baby Yoda there? I have to ask.
Yeah. Baby Yoda, you know what? I don't think they tell you that in the show. So I know a lot of you are always looking for, you know, tips and things on new technologies, etc. So I'd love for you to follow me on Twitter. I'm at TechBubble, and on the right you can see the types of threads I've been posting. It really is a developer-centric kind of Twitter account. I try and help people make the transition from Web 2 to Web 3. In case you're wondering what that ape is on my profile, that's a non-fungible token, meaning it's a collectible, digital collectible from the Bored Ape Yacht Club. There's about 10,000 of them, and they are highly valuable. This one in particular, it's just a picture, yes, but it's worth almost $43,000. So NFTs are the rage, and as you get into Web3, you find out that there's a lot of cool stuff happening. All right, so enough about all of that. Let's get into our presentation and our talk. I wanted to make sure everyone has a common baseline here. I know pretty much everyone by now has an idea of blockchain, but I wanted to quickly state what might be obvious. In blockchain, it's essentially decentralized. The way it works is someone submits a transaction to the network. The transaction is broadcast to a network of peer-to-peer nodes. The computers called nodes. The nodes validate the transaction using fairly complex cryptographic algorithms and compose the transactions into blocks. Those blocks get added onto what is a chain, and that's where blockchain comes from. It's otherwise also called a distributed ledger. There's plenty of material on this online, so I won't belabor it. I do want to point out that there are 2 types of chains. There's public and private chains. Most of the time you hear about the public chains, about, for example, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Flow, etc. There's literally hundreds of chains at this point. And there's also private chains like Hyperledger, Hedera, Hashgraph, etc., etc. So most of the work we do is on public chains, and that's kind of where I like to be, because in private chains, while they may be a consortium of 3 or 4 companies, it's still centralized. And I'm a proponent of decentralization, mainly because I see it as a way to have a more just and equitable world where people who may not have been born in the right place at the right time with the right amount of money can still have a high quality of life. That's the whole message and the whole vision around decentralization, and that's what excites me about it. Okay, now let's get into the meat of it. So you might have heard the term smart contracts. So smart contracts are actually very poorly named. They are in fact really dumb. They are mainly applications that run on the blockchain. Some blockchains have something called a VM, a virtual machine. You know what VMs are. You run them all the time on your servers. But on blockchain, there are a special kind of virtual machine that are very highly constrained to work in what is essentially a stateless environment. Smart contracts are applications that run on these blockchains, on these virtual machines, and there can be any number or type of them. There's 3 main characteristics of smart contracts that you should be aware of. First and foremost, the code is immutable. Once smart contract code is deployed to a blockchain, it is there forever. It may never be changed. Contrast this to the list of releases and bug fixes that Mitch posted earlier that we are used to in Web 2.0, like, oh, there's a problem, we fix it, we go on. In Web 3.0, with smart contracts, you cannot do that. You have to have code that is bug-free to the extent you can write it that way, and stable when you deploy it because it is done. You cannot change it once it's out there. The other aspect of smart contracts is it forces you to write really, really good, really, really efficient code. Why? Because every little line of code, every little instruction costs money. It's called gas to execute. So transactions cost money to execute on blockchain. And if you have written sloppy code, then your users will end up paying for it by paying a lot of money. Storage is also very expensive on chain. You write contracts in a very judicious manner, in a very efficient manner, because even little bits of storage cost a lot of money. So something like 500 meg would cost you probably over $1 million at this point to store. So you don't think of a blockchain as a database. Some people call it that. It's not. It's a distributed ledger, and you store very little sort of data on it, but the data you store has meaning. And usually what you do is you hash data and store it on smart contracts. So hashing is a one-way mechanism by which you can take data of any size and convert it into a short string, which represents that data in such a way that if even one bit of the data is changed, the hash would change immediately. All right, so with that background, let's move on to look at architecture. So this is an extremely familiar architecture diagram. It's simplistic, but familiar. You may have a desktop at web clients in a Web 2.0 world. It's called in a centralized application scenario where they connect with a web server. The web server or web servers, if you have a cluster or something of them, they connect with an API server, which then securely connects with the database server. This is a canonical sort of model of modern web applications, including DNN and other CMSs. So how are Web 3.0 applications different? Well, you have the same kind of clients. You've got a desktop and mobile clients, but your application called a decentralized application, or more popularly DApp, is different. It is a client application consisting of HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. It could be hosted anywhere, but generally it's hosted on decentralized storage networks like a few of them, IPFS, Saya, Arweave, etc., that don't require any hosting provider. No ISP, no hosting provider, no monthly fees, none of that. Your client application then interacts with your smart contract on any blockchain node. So a typical blockchain node, like for example, Ethereum, might have a few thousand nodes. Pick one, any one you want, it doesn't matter. And your application connects and interacts with that. And that is how Web3 architectures are. So you're probably wondering, well, that seems simpler than the Web 2.0 one, where I had all these components, and you would be 100% right. Because in Web 3, it is a much simpler architecture. It is decentralized. You don't have to pay for your database server. You don't have to have separate API servers. You don't even pay for the web servers. It's all part of the infrastructure. It's all free. The way things are monetized is when you conduct transactions, you pay small amounts of money, trivial amounts of money. But that also depends on the time and like the current price of the cryptocurrency involved, etc. But if you were to take this model and imagine now, how would DNN fit into this? Well, you would not be wrong if you were to imagine that that center thing of HTML, JavaScript, and CSS is just a DNN module or a collection of DNN modules running on a DNN website. So you could very easily take, for example, on Ethereum, a free JavaScript SDK called Web3.js, just like any other JavaScript library. You would use npm to install it, or you can use any other mechanism you use for package management. Add it to your module, and you're set. You can now be interacting with your smart contract or anybody else's smart contract. There is the blockchains and applications on blockchain smart contracts are all public. All the data on them is public. All the code is public. And if you want to hide something, you need to encrypt it yourself before you put it on chain. But otherwise, everything is public. Your transaction history, everything is public. So, but I imagine a day, not in far into the future, when someone creates a DNN module that interacts with a smart contract. Maybe it already exists and I just don't know about it. But if not, we should build it. And I'm happy to collaborate with you to build it. All right, so let's go a little further into what the components of a typical DApp would be. I have drawn these bars as much to scale as Google Slides allowed me to. You can see that the client portion is significant, and the smart contract written in languages such as Solidity, Cadence, Rust, or TypeScript. These are all C-based languages, so if you've written JavaScript or C#, you should be able to pick up most of them in just about a day or so. But then the paradigms around decentralized application development, those take a little bit longer, probably more like a couple of weeks, and you could be good. But the important point on this slide that I want to convey is if you are a Web2 developer and know how to build client apps, you already have 70 to 80% of the skills needed to be a DApp developer. You can pick up learning how to build a smart contract if you choose, because remember, there are public smart contracts you could interact with. You could have someone else write a smart contract. So you should not think of transitioning to Web3 as an either or proposition. You could be working in Web2 with CMSs and things like that, but you could also be dabbling with Web3 and preparing for the future. And the future is coming. It is coming very, very fast. That's one thing I noticed about Web3 is that the pace of evolution is mind-boggling. You have to literally, on a daily basis, look at what's new because it changes very, very fast. So there is essentially a higher and higher number of apps that are being built for Web3. And it won't be very long before they reach parity and then eventually overtake Web2. It's only a matter of years. It's going to happen because decentralization is sort of the natural state. Now, you will argue that, yeah, there's all companies and they have private data and all of that kind of stuff. And I would agree 100% that that's true. Blockchain is not a solution for anything and everything, but within the domain of these decentralized applications, of which there are a lot. There's supply chain, there's insurance, there's collectibles, etc. Web2 will no longer exist for those types of applications. Web3 will be the way to go. But there's a whole host of other applications for which Web2 will be around for a long time. All right, so I wanted to give you some context also in terms of understanding why the demand for blockchain developers is so high and you know what you might expect to get paid. So in the US, the high says 200, but I know that you can get paid much more than that. The demand for blockchain developers is off the charts. And if you get into this, it can be very, very lucrative for you. Let me just pause here and see if there's any questions on this matter before I go on.
Nick, what is a typical use case that you would have for, like just in the context of maybe like your DNN module situation? Like why is it really about the storage of the data or the transactions that makes this of interest and monetization of that?
It's a really good question. So I'll give you a very simplistic example of an application that you might build. So today, as we venture again into the world of airline travel, there is no guarantee for us that our flight will arrive on time. And if it does arrive late, what do you get from the airline? A shrug, well, it happens. Well, imagine an application, and this is not fake, this is actually real, that allows you to purchase flight insurance. So if your flight arrives late, you get paid. So you want that because your time is important. So you pay your 20 bucks or whatever it is before you take off and you do that. So you use a blockchain smart contract for that. And here is something that cannot be done with current technologies. If it can be done, it would be very unsecure. When the flight lands, every flight landing and takeoff, there is publicly available APIs that tell you when that happens. So that data would be relayed to a blockchain. If the flight had landed late, everybody who had purchased insurance instantly from that smart contract would be paid, literally within a second of it landing late. And you're done. One of the most popular applications today are digital collectibles, also called non-fungible tokens. So you've heard of probably NBA Top Shot, etc. And those kind of apps are really apps that are driving the use of decentralized technologies beyond the sort of bleeding edge people to more of mainstream users. So some of the use cases of collectibles are that you own a collectible for your favorite band or your favorite performer of any kind. And you go to a concert, and because you have that NFT, you automatically get upgraded to front seats or things like that. That would be hard to, it is possible to do with Web 2.0, but it requires a lot of things to be in place to make that happen. So in general, the Web 3 solutions take advantage of the fact that there's a trustless, decentralized infrastructure in place that is universally available to everybody, and you don't have to think about, what is that server going to be? What is the password going to be? What is the authentication mechanism? All those things, irrelevant in the world of Web 3. You have only one thing, and one thing alone, is who is the user, and that user is identified by virtue of the private key, which is their secret cryptographic key, and that's it. So a lot of the Web 2 friction is around authentication, authorization, and infrastructure, and that goes away with Web 3. So that's a trivial example, or a couple of examples, but there's many more.
Wasn't there also an example of Walmart using blockchain to track their distribution, like of coffee and fruit?
Yeah, supply chain and provenance tracking in particular, it has been one of the canonical applications of blockchain, where you can track how something gets produced right from the source. So in the case, like Clint pointed out, like from the farmer, like which batch did this coffee bean come from? Which truck did it, how did it get harvested? Which truck route did it take, etc. All of that entire provenance can be on a blockchain. Now you're probably saying, well, I could do that with Web 2.0 database if I wanted to. The difference here is that in Web 2.0, you have to trust someone at some point. What that means is there's a server admin somewhere, or database admin somewhere, an ISP somewhere. Blockchain data is trustless. It doesn't require you to trust anybody because the data is the source of truth. That is the fundamental benefit of blockchains, is trustlessness. And that's why when you have multiple parties in a supply chain, like you've got the brand, the manufacturer, the distributor, the wholesaler, all of that, they are all mutually untrusting. They're all out to make money. They're all out to perhaps screw people over. The numbers might be faked, time deliveries might be inflated, all kinds of things like that. With blockchain, you don't have to trust anybody. The data is the truth because it's immutable. All right, so now I want to tell you a little bit about DappStarter, and I'll keep going until David tells me that I'm going over time, in which case I will stop. But I do want to do a quick demo of DappStarter for you today. It is kind of both nostalgic and somewhat ironic that I'm talking about DappStarter here in a DNN meeting where we talk about modules, etc. Because what we are doing for Web3 is essentially bringing the concept of what is called composability of smart contract modules to Web3. Decentology is about to essentially unleash on the world a platform of thousands of modules that people can put together like Lego blocks. It's called composing, and create very sophisticated smart contracts that they individually would be very hard to build. I don't know if that sounds familiar to anybody, but it does sound very familiar to me when we pick the modules, etc., and we assemble them into our website, right? So with DappStarter, we are making it easy for developers to do that. So you can take, for example, some existing contract code around non-fungible tokens. You can add a module that uses something like yield farming, which is a way for users to provide liquidity for tokens and things like that. You can add a marketplace module, you put it all together, and all of a sudden you've got an interesting app. So that's the vision we are building toward. And we are also doing something very unique and interesting. We are creating a new and interesting model for open source monetization that does not exist yet in the world. This is a pure crypto native open source monetization strategy. It starts with you building a composable module using DappStarter. And right now, if you were to, for example, build a module for DNN, as there are a few module vendors on here, you would be responsible for its design, its development, its support, its quality. Then you would put it on the store, people would find it and buy it. With the DappStarter composable module, you do one thing: you deploy it to the blockchain, and you are done. From then on, whenever any of your modules functions are called by anybody, you get paid a small fee forever, in perpetuity. There is nothing more for you to do other than periodically check your wallet to see how much money you've made, assuming, of course, that when you built your module, you built something that people actually wanted and cared about. As long as that was true, you are set. So this is an open source monetization model for Web3 that we are building, and we are really, really excited about it. And we are now recruiting developers. We want to support you. We want to even fund you to help you build your composable module. All right. This is the part where I switch over to my other browser to give you a quick demo of DappStarter. But let me pause again and see if there are any more chat questions. Oh, all right, great.
If nobody has one, I got one. Like, how in the world do you market a module on the blockchain?
Great question. So as part of the template that you will use to create your composable module, in it is, within the module code itself, is metadata that you can provide about your module, what it does, the keywords for it, etc. We have a client search application that we will stand up, where people can come and search for criteria and look at, okay, which is the most popular module, which has been used the most, or I'm looking for a module for insurance, or I'm looking for a module for supply chain, and it will surface all those. And because it's already on the blockchain, its interface is known, you can even basically just try it out immediately. So all the modules that will be there will be available on what's called mainnet, which is the main production network, but there's also a testnet. So you can instantly just test it out in testnet if you want. So if you're free to market it yourself, and direct people to it, but we are focusing on the curation and discoverability of modules, so developers don't have to worry about it.
Very cool.
Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Nick?
Okay.
Nick?
Yeah.
I'm curious. So I'm Mr. Evil, and I want to publish some bad data. The horses I didn't want to won, so I want to publish some bad horse track data. My neighbor's Mr. Good, and he's going to publish some good data. How do people? So data goes into the blockchain. It's irrevocable. It's solid, but it's attached ultimately to my identity, I presume, and that's why people would go looking for it, is somehow they know that the horse track data is from someone trusted and not from me, right? I'm sort of curious. It's there, it's irrevocable. I've got to pay a storage fee to have it put there. How do you trust to put the data there?
Yeah, very good question. Thank you for that, John. So blockchain data cannot exist by itself. It must exist in the context of a smart contract. So the application owns the data. Therefore, it is very easy for people to see if a particular smart contract is malicious. Don't use that smart contract. It has an address associated with it, and so you would not use it. On DappStarter, with the platform we are building, we recognize that there will be developers out there that will create malicious modules, and we don't want people to use those. So what do? Well, we have also created something really, really innovative there. What we are doing is also essentially inviting and encouraging a community of auditors to exist in our ecosystem. So what the auditors will do is essentially audit the code that developers have put out there. And if they feel the code is secure, they will do something called staking to vouch for the security of that code. What staking means is put their actual money on the line there. If enough auditors do this, you can trust that module, if the module still fails or does something malicious despite having been audited, then the auditor's stake value is slashed, meaning they lose that money and it is distributed pro rata to the people who lost any money or in a hack like that. So we are building an insurance layer for open source modules. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, great.
All right. So DappStarter.Decentology.com. This is our website. It's a standard Web 2.0 website. We are blockchain agnostic, so we support multiple blockchains. We are careful about the ones we support. We want the most popular ones on there. I'm going to demo today using Ethereum. So for every blockchain, we support at least one of the languages they support. So as I click around, you can see that the language is going to change. So on Flow, it's a new language called Cadence. On Solana, it's Rust, a very popular low-level language. On Ethereum, it's a language called Solidity. I learned Solidity many years ago. It took me quite a bit of time because Solidity was very new then, and nothing in the documentation agreed with what was actually implemented. So it was a fun task of guessing what the hell was going on, but I made it past, and Udacity invited me to teach their blockchain nano degree and create the whole thing. So I created the whole curriculum and I taught the Udacity blockchain nano degree, and it still remains unchanged, and thousands of developers have used it. So I both love and hate Solidity. You can choose the framework you want, whether you want React or Vanilla JS or whatever. But then here's where it gets interesting. What we have done is abstract smart contract design patterns into modules. So you can check whatever features you want. So I'm going to choose that one today, and I'm going to choose something called file storage on decentralized file storage. It's the interplanetary file system. We'll choose that. Let's say we want multiple document upload with a folder, and then you give your DApp a name. So I'll call it DNN demo, and then you say create DApp. Now what's happening in the background here is that our code, we have an intelligent code processor called hypergrep, and it took the options you had selected and it intelligently weaved that code together to create a full stack source code application. The smart contract code, unit tests, client UI, and server API all built in, and it put that into a dynamically generated GitHub repository, which I'm going to go to here. And you can see that repository was created in the time I spoke, and it's now available. So the source code is all here. What I'm going to do is whip through the demo real quick. I'm going to copy my code here, and on the right-hand side here, I have VS Code. I'm going to git clone that. Let's open it and look at the code. It's right there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the dependencies on this loading and then I'll tell you what it's about. So you do that by typing yarn. We use the yarn packaging manager, and it's going to go ahead and do its thing. Meanwhile, I'll show you what packages are there. You can see there's a client, there's a library, there's a server, etc. Now, what we found is that the hardest part of getting started with blockchain is getting to the point where you can actually compile code, run it, etc. It might take you weeks before you get all the libraries and dependencies and all that right. Our goal was to compress that to 15 minutes max. Our record time for getting that done is 1 minute and 22 seconds. So 1 minute and 22 seconds from the time you hit our website to getting a DApp running on your computer. That's what DappStarter is all about. We do all the orchestration. We, for example, we run a blockchain emulator, we create test accounts, we compile the code, we create web packaging, we create a front end, we create a server API, and we make all of that work seamlessly with hot loading. So as you're editing, it automatically loads, as you will see momentarily. In fact, the longest part is getting these dependencies down. And so we have fixed that also. Starting in about a week and a half or so, we are introducing cloud containers. So you don't even have to do this. And within 10 to 15 seconds of going to our website, you will have built your first decentralized application. So we're almost done here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off the processing, and you will see all the orchestration work we've done in order to make DApp development super, super simple for Web 2 developers and even Web 3 developers. Existing developers also use this to get started.
And Nick, we could throw in here that this has been proven that Southerners can do this every now and then as well and get it to work.
Yes, Clint does run it and works. And Clint, you've had it work with one of the most complicated of them all, which is Solana with Rust, which has a huge number of dependencies.
Yeah, I mean, I think my takeaway from all that is it's harder for Windows developers.
Yeah. So it looks like the dependency loading is taking a little bit longer than usual. I'm usually done by now. So there we go. Okay. All right. And now we type yarn start. And now this kicks off all the work we've done to orchestrate all of this. It runs a whole bunch of services on different ports. And this is all running in parallel. It created a bunch of test accounts, and it's compiling some smart contracts now. It is then going to deploy those smart contracts. Those Sol files you saw were Solidity files. It's going to create a web client. It's going to run Webpack to compress it, package it. It's also going to run an SJS server API. And in a second, you will see my client is ready. You have dappiness. So we also, in addition to the client here, for the modules you chose, we provide a UI harness so you can easily interact with the blockchain and see how things work. So I'm going to start with a very simple example. And David, signal to me if I'm running over and I can stop. But if not, I have another 2 to 3 minutes of things to do.
I think we're good for another 10 or 15 minutes or so.
Okay, great. All right. So I'm going to show you this contract run state. You notice that I did not choose administrator role when I picked these. So our system is intelligent. It will figure out any dependent modules and yank those into your source code also. So I'm going to show you how this works in just a second. But before that, I want to show you our source code. So I'm going to show you contract source code, which for many might be the first time you've seen it. What we do is the generated code is extremely well commented. In fact, I would say over commented, and we do that deliberately. As a developer, we want you to look at this code and figure out what's going on very, very easily. So that is kind of a pattern with DappStarter throughout, is well commented, secure code. All right, I'm gonna now demo for you the run state module we picked. So the idea here is that this homepage, you will replace that with whatever you want. The UI harness, you will use it during development, and when you're done with development, you will just get rid of it. That's kind of the development pattern here. So let's go to run state. Run state is a very simple module that turns your contract on and off. Let's say that you find a bug in your contract and you want to pause it to prevent financial loss. Maybe your contract has like $200 million in it, and like hackers have found some bug. You want to stop the loss. Well, you can use contract run state to pause that while you figure out how the heck to get around that. So the first thing we'll do is we'll do a read, which is a call to the blockchain. And it tells you that the contract run state is yes. Now here's something interesting that you need to know. For blockchain, smart contracts, reads are always free. You can do 100 reads, 1 million reads, 1 billion reads. It's always free. It doesn't matter whose node you're hitting. When you write, you submit a transaction, and there is always a gas fee associated with it. So now that we've seen that the contract is active, let's turn it off, and then hopefully we can come back and it'll tell us, no, it's not. So I'm going to submit a transaction, and for that, pay attention to the console down here, and you will see that a transaction is submitted when I click here. So let's do that. And it happened pretty quickly, and the transaction is done. Now let's query, and you can see that the run state has changed to no. So I'm going to turn it back to yes so I can demo the rest of it. But you can see here, like the gas usage was how much, which block number was done, etc. Now, what I'm running here is an emulator for the blockchain. It would be no different than you running SQL Server locally or something like that in order to be able to do your development. So my blockchain is local. It's just an emulator. Okay, so now that we've verified this, let's go ahead and look at this module, the IPFS module. Now, decentralized storage, basically, remember I said storage on blockchain is very expensive. That's called on-chain storage. So what do? You store a pointer to your storage, but you store your actual data in decentralized file storage, of which there exist many resources, IPFS being the main one of them. So with this particular module, you can very easily store documents on the decentralized web. Let's check it out. So I'm going to demo here, and I'm going to go find some photos. Let's pick here. Let's pick this one, and and this one, and we want to upload these photos. So where am I uploading these? I'm uploading these to one of the nodes for IPFS. There are hundreds of them. I just pick an arbitrary one. It doesn't matter which one. So it might be Cloudflare, it might be any public one you want, or if you have a private, your own IPFS server, you can also upload it there. So let's go ahead and upload this. So what this is going to do is upload these two documents to IPFS, which is going to give us a hash. That hash uniquely represents the folder into which these were uploaded. Since I uploaded multiple ones, there's a folder, but individually each of those also have a hash. And then the next thing I did, the module does, is it writes a reference to that hash in the blockchain smart contract, as you'll see momentarily. But first, let's prove that this is in fact on the internet somewhere. So here's the URL for it, and you can see this here. I'll put this in chat so you can verify for yourself that I did not make this up. It is actually there on IPFS. The photos are there, and yeah. So this is public storage. Anyone can use this. It is available to anybody. And in IPFS, the thing that you want to pay attention to is this part here. This is called content addressable storage. We are used to a world of URLs, where the URL tells you, okay, the domain is XYZ, the folder is XYZ, the file is blah, 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 .jpeg. That is location address storage. Content addressable storage means you should know the hash, and that's all you need. Put that hash on any of the network servers. It doesn't matter which one. It will figure out where on the planet your file is, and it will retrieve it for you. So that's how content addressable storage works. And it's great. You can put megabytes, gigabytes, whatever you want of storage on there. So now you see that in addition to my IPFS URL, it gave me a doc ID. So let's verify that this document was in fact written to the blockchain. And we can do that by querying the document ID. And let's view it. And you can see that it returned a digest, and it also returned the exact same URL and hash. So this tells me that the document was in fact written to sort of the blockchain. So this was a very rapid and very quick and rushed demo of DappStarter to fit the time, but you get a sense of what we are doing here. We are making it super simple for Web2 developers to get started with Web3. I'll show you one last thing and I'll call it quits. We have designed this so there is lots of hot loading, etc. So for example, in our client, I'm gonna go to this page here. So we have pages, and this page is actually represented here. We use a library called lit element that allows you to have a really nice HTML color coding, syntax highlighting rather, even in JavaScript literal templates. So you can see here, this is a JavaScript template. So I can change this to, let's change this to DNNS and save that, and hands off. You'll see that it's all hot loaded, etc. And bam, it just does that like that. So from a developer standpoint, we've made it effortless for you to build there. The client here is a JavaScript-based client. The beauty of this is you could toss it aside, you could delete it, you could ignore it, and you could have a separate DNN project now, which had only one dependency, this DappLib. We've designed it so if you have this one dependency in your JavaScript, in your .NET new client, you can make it connect and do everything I just showed you. 100% of this is all backed into this one project, the DappLib. So dapplib.js is all you need, and you can connect and interact with the blockchain, etc. So that's what I had for you. Hopefully, oh, there's a question here about Tailwind. Yes, we use Tailwind CSS in this particular client. You don't have to use it. You can ignore it. So this whole client thing I showed you, it's just there for your reference. If you want to use it, you can. It's really DappLib where all the magic is. And DappLib has no client-side visual or UI dependencies. So, all right. Any other questions? Hopefully, I succeeded in giving you a taste of what is possible on Web3. You know, maybe piqued your interest a little bit to look. If it would be great if you're interested for you to join our Discord. Clint, if you don't mind, can I ask you to put our Discord link in there and join our community and come talk to us, and we'll help you. We'll handhold you and lead you into this new and exciting world. So thank you for the opportunity again, David. And that's all I had.
Fantastic, Nick. Really interesting stuff. I know a lot of people are probably like scratching their head trying to figure out how to connect these dots. You know, it's like a different way of thinking and a different world there altogether. But you did a good job. I really appreciate the demo. That kind of helped connect a few things for me, at least. Anyways, I really appreciate that. Do we have any questions for Nick before we call it a night here? Awesome. Well, big round of applause for Nick. Thanks for joining us. It's really good to see your face and hear your voice again on all this. And thanks everybody for joining this month's edition of the Southern Fried DNN Meetup. Please join us next month. I think we have, oh my goodness, I should have had this up already, but I didn't. Let me go and see who we have up on docket for next month. Next month is going to be, we have Timo Brinloff and Jay Mathis joining us next month. Both of those topics have yet to be determined, but looking forward to seeing what kind of magic they're going to bring. So encourage them to get their topics in if you talk to them. So thanks everybody for joining. We will end the recording at this point. And I cannot end the recording. Hey, Daniel, are you able to end the recording at this point? Or do I have to make myself a host again? I switched host. Now I can't end the recording.
Daniel has taken a break or something.
Oh man, that was probably not a great idea.
We can't tell any jokes.
Let me see if I
The meeting,
can.
in the meeting, it will stop.
Oh, okay, that's great.
But it normally stops recording and then we do small talk afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. So I will try my best. I'm gonna hit record. No, it is not letting me do it. Well, that wasn't a great idea. So I guess we are not going to do the small talk tonight. Thanks everybody for joining us, and I hope you have a great month.
You could always edit the recording, Dave.
Yeah.
We
Yes,
have to
Don't
trust
be
us as well.
lazy.
Yeah, kind of like you editing photos.
Hey-yo.
Burn.
Hey, I edit those pictures every day.
You're right. You're
I just
right.
don't get it right very often. So when I get it right, you'll know.
Man.
Well, thanks a lot, everybody. Really great seeing everybody. Hope you have a good one.